ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is Tuesday night, the 14th of January. Tomorrow is my father's birthday. And it's the middle of the week, the middle of the month. Cutting the month right down the middle. And I'm hoping that you guys have had a good Tuesday, wherever you are. Tonight's going to be a pretty good show. It's going to be packed from start to finish. The confirmation process for a lot of, Donald Trump's cabinet members has begun today. A clown car filled with barely functioning senators have already made their presence felt. Of course, it's only going to be remembered in a comedic sense. That's really all this is all about. It's ridiculous. And I don't know how many more of these I'm going to watch, even in instant replay. Just so ridiculous. Just get on with it. This is everybody's chance to make a stand and drop the mic and maybe start a hashtag. Elizabeth Warren is like, she is just fiending for the days where, what was that hashtag that the left on Twitter gave her for like 3 days? It got turned into a t-shirt. Yet she persisted. Something. You remember that? Elizabeth Warren. She's like that was like her heyday at this point. That was before all of the DNA tests came back inconclusive with her lies about being Native American and all that shit. Anyway, everybody's just having their little go with it. Had the Nexium chick up there doing it, Kirsten Gillibrand. Anyway, we're going to have a little bit of fun with that. I have a couple of clips there. We're going to pick through some other news up front, including some comment from Donald Trump that he made about the need for an external revenue system, which has made a lot of people hope that this means that this thing, which is all about collecting duties and tariffs from other countries doing business with the United States, which is how the government is constitutionally supposed to be funded. People are hoping that this is going to replace the malignant tumor that is the IRS and everything that goes along with it. So that's all up front before the 7:25 arrival of Chris Hamilton from Hotchkiss Insurance. He's coming back to us since his first appearance in November. I wanted to do a quick follow-up with him. It'll just take up the last half of the first hour, and I think it's going to be really good because, I wanted to do a little bit on the now completely forgotten December assassination of Brian Thompson, United Healthcare. And I also wanted to just talk to him about the things that I observed during that, see what he thinks about it. And also if he had any kind of a congressional wish list for industry reform in the coming years, what would it be? In the second half, I have a great guest coming on as well. This is the friend of Jeremy Ryan Slate that he talked about last night. His name is Scott Mulvaney. And he's a veteran fireman who is going to be talking to us a little bit about his years of experience in combating blazes in the wilderness, not necessarily running into burning buildings and, in urban and suburban areas, but we're talking about very specifically out in the wilderness, man versus a burning forest. So that'll be in the second half, and a lot of little things in between. Here's a couple of them just off the bat. Number one, Quite Frankly.tv. Remember, up top, there's your navigation bar. Well, over here there's a new drop down. It's called Articles. And that is where the blog posts are housed and also the newsletter archives, which is what this is. There you go. From August to January, it's all there. It's a wonderful archives page. Please go check it out. Also, at the top of the forum page on quitefrankly.tv, again, calling all frankly couples. We already have a couple of couples that responded to my call last night. We would love to feature more Quite Frankly couples out there. Not necessarily couples that met through the show, though we know that there are a handful of those out there that Quite Frankly brought them together. And, anybody, we want to know about you. So go to the top of the forum, check it out, and drop us your story. And we want to get you into the February edition of the Bulletin. That'll be great. That'll come out a week before Valentine's Day, obviously. A week before spring training. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there, baseball guys. The spring is coming. It's coming. All right, here's some news out of India, so you know this is going to be good. Headline from the New York Post. Fed up farmers in India have started wearing bear costumes to protect crops from monkeys. It's genius. There you go. If you were a monkey, I'm sure you would want nothing to do with that bear right there, wouldn't you? Farmers have been dressing up in bear costumes to scare monkeys and protect their crops. The farmers, based in the Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, began wearing the costumes while patrolling their field last month. Villagers pooled money together to purchase a bear costume, which the farmers take turns to wear. The villagers pooled their money together to put for this? How much of it? That's not even a bear mask. What is this thing? And how much did it cost that you needed to pool together? I'm telling you, it's like my first impression of India was Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones. It was in watching Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was when I knew I never wanted to ever go to India or have anything to do with that place. I've made some great Indian friends over the years, Indian bosses. I've loved those people. We've become good friends. But everything about this is strange. And it's all because of Indiana Jones. That's not a bear. What the hell do bears look like in India? As a result, the farmers decided to take matters into their own hands by using bear costumes to protect their crops. In response, Duwa Field Director Lalit Verma said that the farmers are being educated during meetings and advised on methods to safeguard their crops from monkeys. They're walking around in this thing in shifts. I wonder how effective it is. The monkeys have stayed completely away. It doesn't make sense. All right, there's one thing for you. Here's another one. This guy, Glenn Toons, he's from Norway, and he's an idiot. He took a screenshot of Marjorie Taylor Greene. I guess she tweeted on the 12th of January, 2 days ago, at about 9 a.m., and Marjorie Taylor Greene said the following. She said, why don't they just use geoengineering, like cloud seeding, to bring rain down on the wildfires in California? They know how to do it. And you know what? It is a great question that somebody who understands geoengineering and cloud seeding should be able to talk about. You know, how do you do this? Because it should be possible. The technology has been there for well over a century. Of course, idiots like Glenn over here and the many more people that liked it then looked into the claim to actually find out the validity of it and didn't just take a purely political stance and saying, oh, that Marjorie Taylor Greene weirdo said it, so it must be absolute bullshit. He says, as a Norwegian, I just have to say that it's absolutely terrifying that this fucking moron is a member of Congress in America. Well, stick to your Norwegian ways and shut the fuck up, because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. And I actually had to get in touch with Jim Lee on this. And I asked Jim Lee, I said, Jim, wasn't early cloud seeding operations, and we're talking about 19th century, I believe, actually based on the burning of brush and other materials so that water and ice particles, water droplets had something to cling to? That was the whole thing about cloud seeding, is that whether it's the silver bromide or iodine, whatever the hell the solution is, the whole idea is that when you're in a place that it's dry to the bone, you need to have just something in the air for water to accumulate on and cling to. And it was actually the soot of these fires that made it possible. I remember him telling it to us. This is in 1840. They were talking about it. Jim got back to me and said, yes, his name is James Pollard Espy, the Storm King, they called him. He discussed that in 1840. The quote is, theory that storms could be produced by large fires, making local disturbances in the equilibrium of temperature, whence follow ascending currents, clouds, and rain, which means that West Coast fires make for East Coast showers. So the real question is, if you're trying to douse California with some kind of rain-based relief for a terrible forest fire, where do you set the fires? Do you have to find a way to seed the clouds off the coast so then it comes across? Because that's really what that had come down to. So I knew that it was a 19th century idea. And of course, since 1840, I mean, there's a whole 100 years after that of doing one thing or another. And then another 20 years after that, we're in the 1960s. And of course, that's when we're using weather weapons with precision in Vietnam and in the Caribbean to screw with Castro and Cuba and try to destroy his sugar crops and all that stuff. So it's a very, regardless of what you think about Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's a question worth asking someone who is not prepared, who is not just going to look at you with a quirked brow and go, "What? What are you, stupid?" You don't have to deal with one of those zombies. It's actually a really constructive question to ask. And I have to imagine that when you talk about wind, the real question is, where are you going to burn the fire to create the rain on the coast? You have to be out in the ocean. So who knows? Who knows? Maybe I can get Jim Lee to come call in tomorrow night. Maybe I can get him to call in for like 15 minutes in the second half of tomorrow night after Ilana Freeland come on, because we're going to be already deep down the geoengineering rabbit hole. And can you imagine having a double dose? We had a double dose last night of guests. We have another double dose tonight. What a week. What a week. All right. That's it. That's it. We have about 15 minutes or so before our guest, Chris Hamilton, comes on. So let's just get this stuff started, because I want to watch a couple of clips from the ridiculous clown show confirmation hearing today. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, my friends. It's a good, cozy night here in the... I had Anthony put the jester hat on the lava lamp at 2 p.m., and he also turned on the space heater, so it is quite comfortable in here. We'll be right back.
Ask your sister to sit in a half a tub of water. You've just saved over 10 gallons of water. Turn the water off when your mother's brushing her teeth. You'll save over a gallon of water.
Opening a hydrant isn't funny. It can waste over 1 million gallons of water a day.
Don't let the water run while your father is shaving. This will save over 2 gallons of water.
Tell your brother to get out of the shower. Shorter showers save 3 to 5 gallons of water.
Keep New York wet.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's
If you have not, the newsletters speak for themselves. They're wonderful compositions. But I got to say, this is my best playlist yet. So I have the Quite Frankly mixtape that our good friend Amanda in Florida helped me put together years ago, that she transferred it over to me on Spotify. And I've been building that up. There's nearly 400 songs that we played on the show throughout the years that are over there. And so that's the general playlist. But then we have seasonal playlists that we've been creating for the, for extra content that we can add and share in the bulletins. I made the I made the autumn playlist. I made the holiday playlist, Christmas, and now it's the winter playlist. The winter playlist is definitely the best one yet, and I'm still adding to it. And I already got a leg up on Spring Fever playlist and the summer playlist. There's going to be a lot of yacht rock in that summer playlist, man. But also some Motley Crue and everything else, some good driving music. You gotta listen to the winter playlist. Yeah, you must. And it's all in the other thing, that newsletter thing. Go ahead and check it out. I could also drop the entire link into the chat room, maybe later on. So yeah, Butthole Surfers are in here too. Little bit of Beck, little bit of Butthole Surfers. Oh, geez. Okay, well, speaking of losers, the Senate went to work today. Let's go and check it out. Here's the first one. I'm sure you've seen this. Elizabeth Warren. This was pathetic. Citizen Free Press. Hilarious exchange between Pete Hegseth and Elizabeth Warren. She, I don't know, I guess she's trying to get him, and it didn't work out. Here you go.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals?
Yeah, she's a intellectual giant. Well, Senator, I don't know if you know this, but I'm as much a general as you are a Native American. And where does she go next? Yes, but you're going to be in charge of the generals. Okay, well, what does that mean? Being around generals makes me a general? Is it catching? Is it contagious? It was like this all day. The yappiness. The male senators tried to take a little bit more reserved Sherlock Holmes approach. Didn't work out too well. But the women just tapped into their yappy. Tapped into the yap. Here's Kirsten Gillibrand. Like this forgotten. I keep forgetting that she's one of 2 New York senators. How the hell does she stay in that post next to him? How the hell did this work? I just don't get it. Take a listen to this yappy. Ugh, look at her. Look at her. She better up get some head and shoulders or something like that. Looks like she needs a little bit more I don't know. Let's get some prenatal vitamins. What the hell's going on with her hair? Who does she look like? She looks like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. I wonder if she's building a time machine in her basement. Great.
Everything you've said in these public statements is politics. I don't want women. I don't want moms. What's wrong with a mom, by the way? Once you have babies, you therefore are no longer able to be lethal.
Right. Yes. Even before you have babies, you should not be in combat. Listen, you want to know something? That is a position that most Americans have. That's a position that most Americans have. It's not controversial. It's just for the social engineers that this is supposed to be like, what's the problem? Okay, so a woman will have a baby, then what's wrong with her leaving the child behind to go and serve in a war zone afterwards?
I mean, you're basically saying women, after they have children, can't ever serve in the military in a combat role. It's a silly thing to say. No. You're a silly woman. You're a silly woman. And if only Senator Gillibrand were this infuriated to learn that her father was a lobbyist for the NXIVM sex cult, I would have been impressed at the time. But this is where her performance, this is where her best performances are rolled out. It's that she saves her energy for gaslighting whoever is watching this trash into believing that institutions like the military have not had standards regularly diminished, lowered in quality over the last couple of decades in order to make a comfy place for American girls. All right? It's happening in fighting forces. It's happening in local levels with police and fire departments. And I understand. You know some really, smash mouth women in your life that can pull it off. For every one Rosie the Riveter, there are 25 Amy Schumers. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. And this is where she chose to make a stand. Good for her, right? Now, here's Tim Kaine, something I thought was just absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. He chose to go with the moral attack on Pete Hegseth. Again, I don't know Pete Hegseth. I don't watch Fox. I think he was on the television. And he's going for Department of Defense here. So, but this is the path that crazy-haired Tim Kaine looks like he just rolled out of bed with his hair. Another one. He probably would look better with Kirsten Gillibrand's hair. But he tries to take the moral route because apparently Pete Hegseth has had infidelities in his marriages. Maybe he's married a couple times. I don't know. But it's just like, well, you're not a moral man. We can't have you managing the military
and making sure that it's ready to kill people when we need it to kill people, because that's the only thing it exists for, not making people feel good about themselves. It's about being able to kill people quickly and effectively, and to be so damn deadly that you hope nobody wants to fight in the first place. That is what a military is theoretically there for. Obviously, we know that it's been repurposed over the years, but still, take a listen to this, which I just think is so incredible that Tim Kaine is taking this stance unironically.
I will allow your words to speak for themselves.
You're not retracting that today. That's good. I assume that in each of your weddings, you've pledged to be faithful to your wife. You've taken an oath to do that, haven't you?
Senator, as I've acknowledged to everyone in this committee, not a perfect person, not claiming to be.
But no, I just asked a simple question. You've taken an oath like you would take an oath to be Secretary of Defense in all of your weddings to be faithful to your wife. Is that correct?
I have failed in things in my life, and thankfully I'm redeemed by my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
In finalizing divorces.
Okay, he's talking about divorces, he's talking about broken oaths. As if, you know, he's going to get into he's going to get into his office at the Department of Defense, and he's going to be so taken by the sight of an Apache helicopter that he's going to want to make love to it or something like that. I don't understand it. I get, you said, well, it's a character flaw. Is he faithful? Is he dutiful in all things? Does that mean he's going to be? It's just not the same. It's just not the same to go out there and fulfill a job, and then when you're talking about issues of the flesh, it's just not the same. But again, this is the hilarious route that Tim Kaine pledged fealty to the Clintons. Okay, hitched his wagon to that horse's ass, and that was fine. That was totally fine. The Clintons both. Who knows what Hillary's appetites really are like? But we know that there is a marriage of convenience there, and Bill was not just having his way with willing participants, but unwilling participants as well. And Hillary Clinton was right there to call them all hussies and skanks and deny their claims and throw bimbo this, bimbo that. I mean, you're talking about a culture that these people are so deeply, but they'll still go out there. They don't care. They'll go out there and do that. You want to talk about hypocrisy? You want to talk about Tukoktu or whatever the hell you want? It doesn't matter. So taking the moral high ground on marital infidelity in order to deny somebody a cabinet position is really, really rich for someone like Tim Kaine or any of them. And that being said, are we to assume that it is now appropriate to question every female nominee on their skanky past? Is that it is? It's going to be this. Let the skank parade begin, or is this only appropriate because he's a man and he can take it? I don't get it. I really don't. And it's also ridiculous, just a ridiculous play, as if Pete Hegseth was nominated to be a morality czar or something like that. He's in the running for a position whose sole purpose is to make our military better at killing things. Okay? And this Muppet over here and the rest of his Muppet friends is like, okay, well, haven't you had an affair before? Ridiculous. And even more ridiculous is that all this moralizing, first of all, these people, everything that just got wrapped up in New York, where we're not going to send him to jail because he's we're trying to respect the presidency, not the individual. Well, then the Stormy Daniels thing that just ended now, that started in late 2016 as an inquiry into America's, are they happy with the immoral person, Donald Trump, that they had elected? And it did not stick with anybody. The whole thing, especially coming from the Democrat Party, especially in a year where Tim Kaine and Hillary Clinton were the nominees for the Democrat side, nobody wants to hear you guys moralizing about Donald Trump's multiple marriages and affairs and being a playboy in New York City over the course of 40, 50 years and building the skyline up. And nobody gives a shit. A lot of people made a lot of just They turned a blind eye, said, it's not my life. Hopefully he takes care of himself and gets right with his family and gets right with God and all that stuff. And it didn't work, which is why they had to turn Stormy Daniels into this moralizing smear story, this true Hollywood story nonsense, and try to make it into something that resembled election interference. Hush money. It's an NDA. It's an NDA. Everybody in Washington has numerous NDAs, okay? Each. So it's ridiculous. And then the final thing is that for anybody to take these types of stances when they are in the room, I think it's the room. I think that this is all happening in the hearing room that the Democrat staffers were filming the gay porn in. I'm pretty sure that this is the room. If not, it's probably the one next door. I don't know. But for them to be sitting here and talking about this and that, and this is the room where all the gay porn was being filmed for the sole purpose of being shared on private congressional chat servers. Oh, oof. There's just too much irony here. You can make smoothies out of it. Really can. Anyway, so that's a little bit of what happened today. I got 3 clips because you don't want to go too nuts. And I'm sure other foolish little exchanges will come past my desk over the next few days, and we'll have fun with that too. But did you hear about this? Donald Trump, far too long we have relied on taxing. This is from today. Far too long we have relied on taxing our great people using the Internal Revenue Service. Through soft and pathetically weak trade agreements, the American economy has delivered growth and prosperity to the world while taxing ourselves. It is time for that to change. I'm today announcing that I will create an external revenue service to collect our tariffs, duties, and all revenue that comes from foreign sources. We will begin charging those that make money off of us with trade, and they will start paying, finally, their fair share. January 20th, 2025 will be the birth date of the External Revenue Service, Make America Great Again. Now, there's been nothing but speculation since then, but those who know seem to think, or those who are close to the campaign and, of course, the incoming administration, the transition team, seem to think that this is the moving out of the IRS and we're on the path of alleviating federal taxes on individuals. Oh, man, wouldn't that be great? That's the theory. Obviously, if it happens, we'll know, and I will throw a giant party, and you're all invited. I will rent out a theater somewhere. I'll bring bands in, and that'll be it. That'll be it. And then that'll just be me spending money. It won't even be a write-off, because unless I can write it off on state taxes. No, that wouldn't be it, because the state taxes will jump and nobody's going to be able to write off anything. Anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about that as time goes on, because I want to see more on this. Is it just going to be a brand new taxing agency alongside the IRS, or is this really something that's going to replace the IRS and just point outward to fund the government? You can't do that. You can't do it unless you cancel so many programs. Which means if he follows through and does it right, this is going to be incredible. I hope so. Can we just hope? Right now, we're allowed to hope. Let's just do it. All right. Anyway, I have something else I want to do with you. I want to bring on Chris Hamilton. Now, back in November, let me get him up on the screen here. Back in November, Chris Hamilton joined us to talk about health insurance industry. We spoke about how it began, what it is now, especially who it is set up to serve at the current moment. Is it serving us, people who are looking for access to healthcare and to hospital networks and all that stuff, or is it just serving those who are there running the companies, their stockholders, and everything else, while we're cut to the side and our access to any kind of services are limited so that it doesn't affect the bottom line? Well, Chris Hamilton was with us back then. It was an incredible show, but only a few weeks later, we had this now long since forgotten assassination of United Healthcare executive Brian Thompson, which nationalized the discussions that we had on this show. Nobody, you guys knew about it. The rest of the nation didn't. Joining us right now, though, Chris is back for a brief yet important follow-up. Hey, Chris, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you, my friend.
Happy New Year to you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's great. Hey, how's everything been?
It's been busy. Let me tell you, there's a lot of news going on in our industry right now, as you alluded to.
Well, I want to get around to that because it feels like light years ago, but it was, it was 2 months ago that you were on the show. It was only last month that the UHC executive was murdered in public. And first thing I want to get around to is what I witnessed in public, and a lot of people were talking about the public perception of this. Truly bizarre situation altogether. That's largely out of sight, out of mind. But let's talk about the public reaction to the assassination in particular, because it was clear that people from all walks of life share very, very common disgust with the insurance industry. It did not matter who they voted for in the election. It did not matter what class they were in. Everybody came out and said, I hate the insurance industry. It is a scam. Everybody had their war stories. It didn't matter what, financial disposition was, anything like that. Of course, there was a lot of discussion about whether or not it was a righteous kill. That was a strange thing there too. But is there anything that stood out for you in those weeks after the shooting that you just took a mental note on that was validating to you or curious?
Well, a couple of things. And let me preface before I start talking about that particular issue or anything else that we talk about tonight. I think it's important for people to understand kind of my perspective, my background, and how I come to this. So I spent over a decade in corporate finance. I've been doing health insurance for companies across the country for over 10 years. The first thing I would say, and this is probably going to piss a lot of people off. I'm probably going to piss people off on the right and the left, but what I want to speak is truth. I think health insurance and healthcare in America, it's a completely broken system. And the reaction to the killing of Brian Thompson just highlights kind of the anger and frustration that people have with healthcare and insurance in our country. And as I've thought back on that reaction, whether it was getting on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, name the social media platform, you're right. The outrage and the justification of this killing, the sentiment that's shared, it's a flashpoint, and I think people needed somebody to be able to point the finger at and say, this guy is the one that did it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to just say this is not going to be popular, but I think that pointing the finger and justifying the killing of Brian Thompson is not right. It's not well placed. I just want to break this down. You're looking at a company that operates in the United States, one of the largest companies in America. They're operating a legal business. And so by all means, what they're doing is legal. Now, I didn't say it was right, but I said it's a legal business. So let's back up a step further. What allowed that to be a legal business? And this is where I think the American population needs to focus their anger and focus their attention on. And it's lawmakers in Washington that have allowed the system to become what it has become. And they've sat by idly while these companies have amassed consolidation. So these insurance companies, I talked about this in our last talk, they've gone out and bought all the other insurance companies. We now only have 4 companies in the United States, 4 big ones. But then they've also vertically integrated. What that means is they're involved in the healthcare that those insurance companies procure and pay for, and that's where they profit the most. And so a lot of the decisions you see these insurance companies making is because they've been allowed to, by the federal government, by the way the law has been written. Look, the smartest people don't work in the government. That's my opinion. That's what I see day to day in the field. They work in private industry, and they look at the laws. It's the rules of the road. It's the mousetrap that's been built, and they have figured out how to profit from that mousetrap. The government's always reactive, and the government is not willing at this point to take the steps that are needed to fix the problem. And I mean, those are things that we can dive into if you want, like what I think needs to happen.
Yeah, we're going to. But, I like to let's save that toward the end, because that's what I want to get into, like a little bit of a wish list for you as the new administration is coming in. But yeah, get back to the rest of it.
So it's easy for us in that particular moment to assign blame to one person or name the other CEOs. It's those insurance companies. It's their fault. But you're looking at this in a vacuum. There's a lot more moving pieces that are happening in that industry. So you've got consolidate. The number one thing that people are frustrated with is we pay an insurance company all this money, but they don't pay for my health care. And one of the things that these insurance companies have to figure out is, okay, what are we going to cover? What are we not? Some of that is going to be dictated by what's in the market. And what I mean by that and what they're having to pay for, look at how health care is provided in our country. Whoever's watching this right now, think about the city that you're in. There's probably a really big hospital system that's there. And if you look back before the Affordable Care Act, there probably were 4, 5, 6, or 7 hospitals there. Your local hospital, they bought up the other hospitals. They bought up primary care physicians. They bought up specialists. They become this 800-pound gorilla in your local market, which allows them to dictate pricing back to the insurance company. And the insurance company looks at that and says, well, we have to keep them in our network or we won't have customers that want to buy our insurance. So what does the insurance company have to do? They've got to pay the piper. If that hospital is going to be in their network, they've got to pay. So I think that's one of the dynamics that you see happening between healthcare, what's covered, what's not. Insurance companies are having to figure out how to pay for this. So that same thing is happening with insurance companies. I just alluded to it. They've bought other insurance companies. They now own a lot of the healthcare supply chain. Yeah. They profit from it, which that dictates a lot of the experience that people have when they're buying medications.
And also what their doctors are willing to do. We were talking about that the last time you were on. It's actually it's getting effectively in between a person and the doctor, especially since doctors are now just really going out there and they, especially if I know from doctors that are a part of bigger networks where they really do lose a lot of their autonomy. There are protocols that they have to follow. They really can't use too much of their training. It's almost as if at this point, with how centralized everything is getting, a doctor is just getting a certificate that gives them legal authority to give out drugs and protocols that are being pre-assigned to certain situations, and they're losing a lot of their flexibility there. And to your point there about the consolidation, that's what I was saying there too. I said this Brian Thompson guy, he had a family and all that stuff. I don't know if he was a clean or dirty guy. I mean, it's a dirty business, but he's just a cog in the machine. And the thing that people were really losing here, even though they knew that they were angry about things, I'm angry about it. I've been priced out of the entire thing. Last time you were on, I told you how I cobbled together a way for my family to be able to seek any kind of attention if we needed it. But when listening to people on television, right on down to the average Joe that was on Twitter or any kind of social media platform ranting about this, you can tell that the Brian Thompson was made out to be the Wicked Witch of the West by people who believe that universal health care, Obamacare, should be 20 times as large, that would be the fix of it. So, I mean, most people don't understand that if they get what they want, they're going to have something 100 times worse. That Brian Thompson is essentially just going to be Anthony Fauci, and not to mention that's one of the bigger functional issues with universal health care, especially on the country that's not. I don't know. That's something we can get to that the next.
Well, I think that's an important point that people need to understand. So there's 2 points I would make. On my channel, on YouTube and TikTok, I've interviewed doctors that have worked inside of the big hospital systems. And they have they've left practice and gone into a different model. They've left practicing medicine for hospital systems because of what you just said. The care they provide is dictated, who they refer to. They've got to stay in their hospital system. They're only allowed to send to these particular doctors. When a patient comes in with a certain condition, they're told how to treat it. And it's typically going to be based on how they're going to be reimbursed, what the insurance schedules will pay. And so you've got kind of this push-pull mechanism, right, where hospitals have become big, it's centralized, and they're dictating a lot of the care that happens. But you made a second point. I think this is really important for Americans to understand. We talk about socialized medicine, Medicare for all. You can look into the UK, you can look into Canada where they have those systems. They manage cost very differently than the United States. So I want to explain the 2 models. In the United States, when you have insurance and you have a PPO, the Affordable Care Act requires all these plans that cover everything on an unlimited basis. And so what you have is essentially an unlimited buffet of healthcare services that can be available. I think that's a good thing. I think people need to have access to care. It needs to be affordable. Healthcare is a right. And I believe we should do that and support our citizenry, because people need access to medications. They need access to healthcare. But there's two ways to look at this. Insurance companies, when they think, okay, there's an unlimited risk here, we have to find a way to manage the cost and be. You would like them to be good stewards, but they manage the flow of medications and procedures based on how they can make money, right? If you contrast that to what happens in Canada or the United Kingdom, they have a budget that they set of what they're going to pay for healthcare in a given year. And this is why you find people in those countries, when they need a hip replacement, when they need an elective surgery, they're not getting it in 2 weeks or a month. Sometimes people will wait 6 months, a year, 2 years to have a procedure. Or you end up in a situation where you're elderly and the government has to make a determination, is it worth giving this person a kidney transplant, or is it worth paying to have this person's hip replaced? Nope, we need to save those dollars to pay for somebody else. That's where the whole death panel thing came up when the Affordable Care Act was being passed. There was this fear that there was going to be death panels. It's also why in those countries you see a thriving private insurance market, which is counterintuitive because they have socialized medicine. What are people buying private insurance for when the government pays for it all? They're paying for priority, and they're paying for access for things that the traditional social medicine system isn't going to cover. And it's also why you see medical tourism from Canada and from other countries coming to the United States, because they can get in and get seen and get their treatment done, where in their home country, they're not able to. So if you look at the two systems, you've got one where it's technically this unlimited access and we're going to charge you out the wazoo for it, and the insurance companies are going to profit in the process. They're going to find a way to profit from it. And the alternative is having a government run it, and they have a set budget. You may have to wait a really long time to get what you need, and you may die before you actually get it. And the other thing to point out here is, if you just look at the federal budget, $1.4 trillion is spent on Medicare today. The government takes in about $2.9 trillion in tax revenue. So it's almost half of the budget, or not the budget, but half of the tax revenue that we take in this country. The budget's actually higher than that, but we run a deficit, a multi-trillion-dollar deficit every year. So if you just look at what the government's taking in tax revenue, it's 2.9. We spend 1.4 on Medicare. If we open up Medicare for all, the government's going to have a really hard time figuring out how are we going to pay for it. And so I think that's where, if we move to a system, I'm not saying that that's bad, I'm not saying that that's good, but I think it's important to understand the implications. There's not enough money to pay for it. So what does that mean for you and me and anybody watching this if we moved into a system like that? Because there's a lot of demand for that right now from the populace. It's going to mean that the things that you want covered, just like your insurance plan today, it may not be covered, or it may not be covered in the time frame that you want because there's not money to pay for it. So I think those are all important considerations. But I don't think that's the answer, though.
Well, let me just throw this in here, because you're saying something that I'm with you on, and I often wonder how the hell this would shake out. First of all, a mixed system. The problem is that when you have this growing welfare, it's really just a welfare system. When you talk about Obamacare, there's nothing really about it. It's a big slush fund, and yeah, the people do have private insurance, but they have to also fund the slush fund. So it makes everything go up, because you can't just take care of yourself. You are forced, and you are stolen from, to fund something else. There's a lot of these things that's why, aside from just the constitutional issues, it's unconstitutional to do this. There's no enumerated power to take this for everybody to provide health care for people right off the bat. But the other thing there too, from an ethical and a little bit more nuanced standpoint, is that healthcare as a right is a hard sell for me, only because, and I'll tell you why. One of the bigger functional issues with the system is that, especially in a country like ours, is that we're not culturally homogenous anymore, and we're also not. We're a union of states. We are not a national. We're not a national government. We are a union. So people look at how European states like Switzerland takes care of people. It's okay. You're looking at countries that are the size and population of New Jersey. Well, over here in the United States, New Jersey, they are an experiment zone. They can find a way to socialize their health care for their citizens, and if it works out, great, because they generated it in state. We are not a culturally homogenous country. We are a union, and we also don't have any strict controls on our immigration anymore. So that's why you essentially create this nearly infinite demand for finite resources. And I'll tell you, Chris, just on my neck of the woods, we've lost several really strategic and important hospitals over the last 20 years because of the collapsing under the weight of illegal immigrants, because people come here, they are never denied service. So every time there's a sniffle and a cough at home, instead of going to your primary for a checkup, they go to the emergency room, and then there's nobody to pay the bill. And hospitals go away because of it, or they get absorbed by larger networks, and it becomes less and less community focused. So there's so many problems with healthcare as a right. It blows my mind.
Well, let me clarify what I mean when I say healthcare is a right. I should clarify that to say access to affordable healthcare should be a right. I mean, we shouldn't make healthcare, if you just think about the society, having a bunch of unhealthy, untreated people is not good for America. Does that mean we should be a fully socialized system or we should be a fully privatized system? I don't think either one of those extremes is appropriate. Now, you brought up another point, which I think is a different argument, is how do we treat there's a distinction between an American and somebody who's not an American or doesn't have a legal right to be here. How should we treat those? And I think that's a different burden. That's a different problem that has to be addressed. I'm talking about people that are in the United States. We should be able to find a way to make healthcare affordable. There's common sense ways to do that, but common sense does not prevail in the current system that we have. Correct. And it's because of the way the lawmakers have designed it. It's the way the market has shifted to what it is today with the big insurance companies and the way they profit, the way they make money. We talked about that in our last talk. And it's rife with misaligned incentives and conflicts of interest. You're seeing it play out today in courts where you're seeing plaintiffs' attorneys helping employees sue their employers for breach of fiduciary duty because they're allowing their employees to get ripped off by the big insurance companies. These are Fortune 500 companies. You can look them up. Johnson & Johnson, Wells Fargo. Those are two companies that have been sued for allowing these insurance companies. Now, these are big, J&J and Wells Fargo were massive companies, Fortune 500 companies that are doing business with Fortune 500 insurance companies. And those companies have selected them to run their health benefit plan for the benefit of their employees. Yet when you look through that lawsuit, it shows you where those insurance companies are profiteering and overpaying for health care. When the same exact things, I'll give you a perfect example. In the J&J lawsuit, there's a medication that's cited in that lawsuit that the plan, the insurance company on behalf of those employers and the employer and the employees, they're paying over $10,000 a month for a medication that could have been bought from a pharmacy like Mark Cuban or paid cash for $48. Mm-hmm. The insurance company paid $10,000, yet a guy with no insurance could go buy it from Mark Cuban for $48. Where in the world does that make sense? And the reason why that is important to understand is the more insurance companies are paying for health care, they have to collect more premium, which raises the cost for you and me to provide the insurance. But what they don't really point out very well, and what this is important to understand, is that medication is allowed to be paid by the insurance company at $10,000 a month because there's money that comes from the big pharma companies to pay to play. There's rebates and there's other incentives that come back to the insurance company. I talked about how these insurance companies profit from the filling of those medications. Yeah. Those insurance companies don't want to work with Mark Cuban. They don't want to work with these other alternate pharmacy benefit partners who can get the drugs, exact same drug. I'm not talking about going and getting a drug from Mexico. I'm talking about this is the exact same drug. And it's $40 or $48 versus $10,000. In what world does that make sense? The people that are in charge today are not spending our dollars the way you or I would spend the money if we were making the decision ourselves. And healthcare is completely broken from the sense of, think about this for just a second. In what industry or what do you buy where the person buying something doesn't meet with the seller and agree to a price before a good or service is exchanged?
Great
you
point.
Don't know what it costs until after you've bought it. And you typically aren't going to get a bill for 60 or 90 days after it happens. The buyer has no voice. We've turned that over to an entity in another state that isn't local to us, and they've dictated the price that we're going to pay. We've turned the keys to the kingdom over to these folks, assuming that they're acting in our best interest. We have an aligned incentive. I want healthcare. You're going to help me affordably manage it, but the insurance companies don't do that. Time and time again, when you look through the data of what they're buying and what they're paying, it oftentimes doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So when you say healthcare decisions, it needs to be more community-based, it needs to be more local, I couldn't agree more. And that's where we're seeing a lot of traction in my particular industry. So I work with employers to help them solve rising health insurance costs. And often when they do that, they're able to lower the cost of the business, they lower the cost of premiums to the employees. And in many cases, when you run into a situation where a drug costs $10,000 and we can get it from another pharmacy, it's the exact same drug, but we're only spending $48, or maybe it's $1,000. Because you save so much money by buying it the right way, you give it for free to the employees. So now you're being able to talk about when you buy things the right way, you can reduce the cost. That's happening in local communities all around the United States. I do that with employers nationally. If I'm a small firm in Texas and I'm able to do that, why can't somebody else? Why can't a bigger organization do that?
Well, let's talk about the bigger organization. The biggest organization being because we have about 10 minutes before we're done with the segment. So I really wanted to make sure that you have enough time to stretch out on this next question, and hopefully you can bring in the last thoughts that you were just about to give us right there. But and again, we're talking with Chris Hamilton, fixhealthinsurance.com and Hotchkiss Insurance. What is your wish list for the next 4 years? We got a Trump administration coming in. We have a new outlook, not only on the economy, but also on health itself, the FDA, deregulation, all that stuff. From somebody who steps in and tries to and successfully coaches businesses in getting more out of the health insurance marketplace and making things more intelligent for consumers. If there is something that that Washington can move and shake on that would make things infinitely better for everybody and bring rising costs a little bit more under control, what would that wish list for the next 4 years be? Go ahead. That's the last question I got for you.
Yeah, love him or hate him, Trump is focused on fixing healthcare. People, when you go on social media, he's going to get blasted, particularly the debate that he had where when asked the question of how are you going to fix healthcare, he said, I've got concepts of solutions for it. And he got blasted because he didn't have a 10-point plan to fix healthcare. What I took away from that comment was it's exceptionally complex problem to fix, and there's not one or two or three things that you're going to immediately silver bullet, this is going to fix the problem. But I want to point out there's hospital price transparency. That was pushed by Trump before he left office. And that was something that was as simple as hospitals need to post the price of a procedure and tell somebody before they buy it what it's going to cost and what it's going to cost using their insurance. And what did we see? The hospital lobby. Hospitals didn't comply. Nobody wanted to comply with this because nobody wanted to share what pricing was. He fought for that. And now hospitals are forced to tell us what things are going to cost. Now, what I'm about to tell you, I think is going to be pretty unpopular in the business community, but I think this is what really needs to happen. So if an American wants to know what are the things that we should be doing to fix healthcare, what should I be writing my congressperson and telling them needs to happen? I think the biggest thing is if you think about the Bell communication system, back in the 80s, they had a monopoly. They controlled our communication system, telecom, nationally. And what did the government do? They broke up the Bell communication system and they created the baby bells. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I remember. I know of it.
A similar process needs to happen in the health insurance space. So what I mean by that, if you look at a big insurance company, pick any of the four, they operate an insurance. So we'll take United Health, for example. People think of United Healthcare, but their parent company is United Health Group. And United Health Group owns dozens and dozens of companies that do various things. It's a vertically integrated company. So they own a pharmacy benefit manager. They're the largest employer of doctors nationally. I think that's an important point to make. They own a host of other companies that act to operate in the insurance space. And they make money in a couple of these, lots of money in a couple of these entities. And it creates a conflict of interest between the insurance company and the healthcare that Americans need so desperately and need it to be affordable. There's no competition inside of that organization. And there's no incentive for them to lower pricing or bring prices down.
Okay.
One of the ways you can fix that is to break that company up. And that's not going to be popular. And on top of that, healthcare is the largest lobby in the United States in Washington. In fact, they've spent $6 billion over the last 10 years. It's public information. It's insurance companies, it's big pharma, it's hospital groups, it's physician groups. They're lobbying, it tells me, because we haven't had change, they're lobbying to keep the music playing, more of the same. So it's going to be hard to get lawmakers to take this up, but I think there's enough demand from the population now that we need change. And it can be something like, if you're an insurance company or you own an insurance company, you can't dictate which pharmacy benefit manager they use. There's certain subsidiaries that you can't force on to an employer-sponsored health plan or through a Medicare Advantage plan. You have to open it up for competition. And when you do that, people are going to be able to, employers, because a lot of the healthcare, the majority of healthcare is purchased by employers in the country. Most people that are insured in the United States are getting health insurance through their employer. Employers have more power than they realize. They should be able to pick all of the vendors that are part of their health insurance ecosystem. That doesn't happen today for the majority of employers that are out there. They're dictated by the insurance company. You work with this company, you're going to get our pharmacy benefit manager, you're going to get our network, you're going to get all of these things. And that's the least efficient system to buy health insurance if you're an employer. And so a lot of the work that we do is breaking that apart, showing employers where their dollars are being spent and how to build a more efficient health insurance system, which allows you to buy health care better. And when you buy it better, it reduces your costs and it allows you to provide that insurance at a lower cost for employees. And oftentimes you're able to waive their costs. They can get access to free health care. That can be scaled nationally. And in fact, you're seeing it being scaled in the employer market through advisory firms like ours. And it's probably the fastest growing segment of insurance in the United States. But it requires an employer that identifies, I've got a problem with health insurance. I need to work with somebody that can explain it and break it apart and show me where the money's being spent. But that model can be replicated at a national scale, and it can almost be automated, if you will, if the rules of the road, i.e. legislation, is enacted to prevent insurance companies from owning certain assets and monetizing them. I think that's one of the biggest things that has to happen.
Okay, so then aside from the fact that culturally we need to continue to see doctors proclaiming their independence and going direct care and seeing just things change within people and doctors bringing their services to open markets locally and all that stuff. Not only do we see the culture need to start changing about what healthcare actually is, but there should be, in your opinion, a little bit of antitrust, trust-busting operations going on there. And also, for anybody who knows the fight for so-called school choice, where you have these the money that is doled out to everybody by way of the Department of Education, allow those people, or in your case, allow people to take this insurance coverage, to take that to more places and not limit their where this coverage can be applied. Allow them to actually take their service or create a little bit more options for people with these services. And I guess that right off the bat, that would be good because people are usually restricted by their networks and all that. And I think right off the bat, it's at least a little bit better than what they were. The hell we are a lot of it as well. We have 3 minutes left. Fixhealthinsurance.com. I have that in the description. I have it on the screen underneath your name right there. Where can people find more on this? Because I'm sure you're going to be blogging about it. I'm sure you're going to be talking about it more in public. And I want people to be able to keep up with you if they can.
Yeah, so fixhealthinsurance.com is the best place to find me. That's a central resource that I provide to people. So there's a couple things that you'll find there. One is going to be the Insider Playbook, and I titled it that. I'm an insider to the industry. My goal is to expose the secrets that the insurance companies in the traditional market don't want us to know. And this comes from years of consulting with employers nationally. This is the blueprint that we use to help employers build efficient plans, reduce their costs, improve the profitability, provide more to employees at a lower cost. The second piece in there, a lot of business executives might wonder, how do I find an advisor that knows how to do this? And so on that side, I've got a checklist of questions that you should be asking advisors. It's an interview prompt that you can use, just thinking through what are your goals with your health insurance, how do you want it to work? And these are questions that you should be asking your advisors. and I provide an answer key to them so you can determine, am I working with somebody that's just going to do the traditional merry-go-round of traditional insurance companies, or is this person an expert? Just like in the medical community or legal community, there are people who are specialists in certain niches of the market, and you want to make sure that you're working with somebody that really understands what's going on in healthcare and health insurance and can detail exactly what needs to be done to fix it. That prompt is going to help you decipher, am I talking to a niche expert, or am I talking to somebody who's just a run-of-the-mill broker that can go sling a policy for me? So that's a resource. I've also got a link tree there. I create content on YouTube, LinkedIn, educational content, just to expose what's actually going on in our healthcare system that's causing us all to pay more at the end, and not get the experience that we want. When expectation doesn't meet reality, that's where there's friction. We pay for insurance, we expect it to cover the things that we need, and it should. And when it doesn't, why? And so my goal is, really the thing I would say is I'm working to solve this healthcare crisis that our economy faces, that our society faces. And it's going to be through discussions like this and educating people on what's actually going on. And that's really my goal in all of this.
Well, it's a great thing that you're doing, because as we open up tonight's segment, when we're talking about Brian Thompson's death and all of that misplaced anger, perhaps people like you, not perhaps, it's necessary for people like you to go out there and actually help people put a real articulate understanding to all of their frustrations connected to an industry that is really just it does not serve the people who are being leached off of to give it sustenance. So thanks for everything.
You need to be upset with is your lawmaker,
big time,
who passed a several thousand page bill without reading it. This is what you get.
And every year, there's more hidden in that pork every year. So, that's why I hope that at least for a couple of years, we don't have to hear about these damn omnibus packages anymore. And Congress at least goes back to starting to vote bill by bill, so we know who to hold accountable for what. Thanks for everything, Chris Hamilton. We will be in touch. And if any big updates on your end, never hesitate to reach out, please.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Okay, take care. There goes Chris, and we will be back on the other side of intermission. You know what I'm going to do real quick? While I go, we have this 90-second break. I am going to put in the chat rooms the link to the winter playlist. There it is over there. There it is in Rumble. There it is in Pilled. Yeah, spreading that around. Go ahead, enjoy it. Enjoy it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back, and we've got another great guest coming up in a few minutes, so don't go anywhere. In fact, share the show so that we have just as robust an audience in the second half as we had in the first. BRB.
Yes, are you willing to support our veterans organizations that will help our veterans get every damn thing that they deserve because they signed on the dotted line to keep us safe, just like...
It's intermission time, folks. Time out to press the like button. Thank you.
Entering, quite frankly.
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 Quite frankly, guys.
Quite frankly.
Quite frankly. Quite frankly.
So everybody watch. Quite frankly. With Frank.
Dare you.
Okay, let's see here. We got a couple of minutes. I want to just switch things up just a little bit. Where is it? Into the grab. Oh, wait, hold on. We have another info-packed show, Frank. Thanks and happy birthday to Big Tony. That's from Jay Britz. Big Tony. Happy birthday, Big Tony. Oh, you're talking about my father? Tomorrow? Oh, yeah. Thank you, Jay Britz. That's a wonderful that's quite frankly superchat.com. You can support the show. You can sponsor the show for an evening by sending a super chat or a Rumble rant or some gold pills
some lemons over there on D Live, whatever is your persuasion. I don't recall 22 on quitefrankly.tv sent some cookies. C. Blanche sent a can. Thank you. Thank you so much. And I appreciate you guys. Nice audience over there on Rumble. Everybody's having a good time. Now, here's something I want to bring up. And I remember the, what was it? The baby bells. When the hell was that, actually? It's before I was born. Yeah. 1980, like a year before I was born. I just remember 9X. That was ours. 9X. So, I don't know. That just didn't make any sense. Didn't make any sense. And there's Bell Atlantic was right below us. And, but that was before, that's like a year before my time. So I spent many, many years not even conscious. So that wasn't really relevant to me, but I got it. I put it all together years later. All right, so let me see here. In the second half, because we have a great guest coming on in just a couple of minutes. His name is Scott Mulvaney. And, but I want to show you this because there's a little bit more on where we were with the wildfires. Take a listen to this. Of strong winds, a return of strong winds spark dangerous situation across fire-ravaged Palisades. This is published on Zero Hedge. This morning, 1 week after fires in Los Angeles County began, the blazes remain out of control, scorching nearly 40,000 acres and leveling entire neighborhoods. On Tuesday, winds are expected to gust between 45 and 70 miles an hour, accompanied by dry air, significantly increasing the risk of fire spread. The National Weather Service has issued particularly dangerous situation red flag warnings for LA and Ventura counties through Wednesday evening, warning that this setup is about as bad as it gets. That's a quote, by the way. That's a quote. Many downed trees, damaging winds, very dry vegetation. Strong gusts could derail any progress made by firefighters early this week across two of the main areas, the Palisades and Eaton fires. The blazes that burned upward of 40,000 and leveled entire neighborhoods and burned more than 12,000 structures. At least 24 people have died, with the death toll expected to rise. So that's what's going on here. They say that as of Monday morning, the fire was in the Palisades was 14% contained, up from 11% early Sunday. Eaton, fire was 33% contained, up from 27% on Sunday. And they're worried it might slide back. You know what it comes down to? It's just one trauma after another. It's just one trauma after another. I know these things happen. I know there's a lot of reasons for it, but it's not coincidence that they cluster this way. And I want to talk a little bit about just, one man's experience going out there and being in the middle of something that is a very natural phenomenon. Fires. It's a way that the earth, the countryside cleanses itself, rejuvenates itself, refertilizes itself, all that stuff. And the human element complicates it because there's whole types of crazy people out there, mentally ill people. There's also just negligence and whoopsies, big time whoopsies. And I went now and I did a little bit of research on the wind situation, about how weather, even in a normal, all things equal, how does the weather affect the fire? How does the fires affect the weather when this stuff is going on? I'm looking to get somebody on as a guest to talk a little bit about it, but this is what I found. Listen to this. Wildfires can indeed influence weather patterns in several ways. Smoke and aerosols. Wildfires produce large amounts of smoke and aerosols, which can alter atmospheric conditions. Smoke particles can act as cloud condensation nuclei, leading to the formation of clouds. Well, that makes sense, because as I was talking to Jim Lee about all this stuff in the 1840s, that was the whole point, to do some controlled burns west of where you wanted things to rain, and hopefully that soot that is in the air can create something for water particles and condensation to grab onto and form clouds. Temperature changes, and some of this came from Grok now too. Temperature changes. The smoke from wildfires can block some of the sunlight, leading to cooler daytime temperatures in the region downward of the fire. Conversely, at night, the smoke can create blanket effect, keeping temperatures higher than they would normally be by preventing heat from escaping. Precipitation patterns. The smoke and aerosols can influence precipitation. Sometimes this results in increased rain or snow due to enhanced cloud formation. However, the type of precipitation can be affected. For example, smoke can lead to smaller, less effective raindrops that might evaporate before reaching the ground, causing what is known as a virga. A virga. Maybe we can ask our friend over here that's coming on. Wind patterns. Listen to this. Heat from large wildfires can create its own weather system, including strong, erratic winds. These winds can spread the fire further, but also affect local wind patterns. Additionally, changes in atmospheric pressure caused by the heat from fires can alter wind patterns on a broader scale. That's something I wanted to be able to sink my teeth into, because I was just wondering, is it always 100-mile-an-hour winds, or are the conditions now with the fires themselves creating some sort of a feedback loop that kind of escalates the whole thing? So I guess my curiosity was somewhat satisfied. Of course, we'll look for more people to talk to as time goes on. And now I want to bring on our second half guest, and that is Scott Mulvaney. Scott Mulvaney is the founder of the lifestyle brand and podcast Live the Fuel. Scott Mulvaney escaped corporate life to serve as a USFC hotshot wildland firefighter before his growth into entrepreneurship. Now a sales and marketing consultant, podcaster, and author, he channels his health nut, adrenaline junkie energy into everything he influences. Scott extends his firefighting values of duty, respect, and integrity into his fire-inspired brand, Live the Fuel. He's here with us right now. Scott, welcome to the show. It's great to meet you.
Great to virtually meet you as well, sir.
Oh, hold on. That's not you. This is you. Wonderful. Yes, I know, a virtual meeting, but it's, man, I'm so happy that we got linked through Jeremy Ryan Slate, and I can't wait to pick your brain tonight. First of all, I would just love to give the floor to you to talk a little bit about your years on the job, and yeah, let's talk about that first.
Sure. I mean, it's actually fun because we're both on the East Coast too.
Yeah.
So, because actually that's the tide of the past. Everybody thought I was a weirdo, a guy born in Jersey, grew up on a farm, chased corporate dreams, realized that sucked, and decided to give it all up and go out west and go fight wildfires.
So that was exactly it. I mean, was this the only the thing that was on your mind in particular, that you, not only did you want to put yourself into some sort of a civic service position, but you in particular wanted to get out into the wilderness?
I was always an outdoorsy nut and a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie, if you will. So if you could find something that channels that, I found out about that kind of gig, and then I realized I couldn't get out of my head, and it's kept festering like a positive motivational thing.
So where did you go when you went west? Where did you go, and how long did you spend there?
Well, actually, shout out to New York and Long Island. I found a fire academy out there that actually did have the baseline certification courses for me to take to at least qualify to apply. So I did that while I was still here on the East Coast, hating my corporate life, finishing a degree on nights and weekends. And then I found another academy in Colorado. And so I realized, okay, I don't have any firefighting background. I need to get connections. I got a network. So I went to the Colorado Academy, got connected there with my instructor that I had in New York. He invited me out, stay with him and his wife, took advanced classes there, just to try and show a baseline, because I had one goal in mind. I wanted to be a hotshot. That's a type 1 incident response level crew. That is the best of the best. The only thing at our level was smoke jumpers, and there's hotshots, and I can get into that later.
Yes.
So I said, if I'm going to do it, I got to go for the best. So luckily in Colorado, over lunch, my instructor said, hey, I know a guy. He's here teaching fire ignitions. He's about to take over a hotshot crew base in Arizona. He goes, you're crazy enough to go to Arizona? And I was like, oh, do tell. And he says, well, that's a Region 3 incident response team region. I'm like, what's that mean? He goes, well, it's really hot down there, and a lot of guys don't want to work in Nevada, Arizona. And I was like, okay, you're singing my song. Let's go. So we sat down at lunch, and then the guy's like, man, you're kind of old, because I was in my 30s. 30.
It's young,
I'm old.
Young man's game, I guess. It's like baseball.
It's so Hot Shots was like very militaristic. Like they're hiring, kids fresh out of high school, off the football team, don't want to go military, whatever. And you got to be a special kind of crazy to do this gig. And I was 31, and he said, well, I don't care. I just got done running my first marathon, doing crazy things. He goes, you got the weirdest resume I've ever seen. He goes, I don't give a crap about your education. I don't give a crap about your corporate world. Good job on the marathon. He goes, but if you can give me at least the next 2 years, I'll give you a shot. He goes, I need a dependable crew for the next 2 years to reestablish the hot shot certification of the crew. They had lost it, and they were regaining it because it takes special training, special everything. So I ended up going to Arizona and serving on the Pleasant Valley Hot Shots. Actually, that's my old rookie helmet. That's the old logo. They're now known as the Mesa Hot Shots. They moved the crew to Mesa, Arizona, because where our crew was one of the last remaining remote crews, meaning we lived in some double wides in the mountains on a fire compound. And when you had days off, you didn't really get to go anywhere because you had to stay within a 2-hour callback. And Phoenix was 3 hours away, Scottsdale. So unless you were getting, quote, released because you've served so many live fire assignments that season, then we would earn a couple of good days to, have true freedom, no chance of callback.
Yeah.
For a mental break. Yeah. So you're going to, where'd I hang out? Pace in Arizona, and hanging out at the Walmart. And
well, you know what? Give us a little bit of a breakdown of this here too, because what you're describing, what I'm envisioning in my head is almost like it's Top Gun, but for firemen. The Top Gun school. What's the difference between hot shots and smoke jumpers? Are they very different disciplines?
Smoke jumper, skydive.
Oh, really?
Like I skydive for fun nowadays.
But they're skydiving what? Into fire zones?
Yeah.
But what are they jumping onto? Fire?
Oh, no, you don't want to land on the fire. That'd be bad.
All right. I don't get it.
I mean, because there's things you can get a case of hot foot. Usually that's when you step into a hole you didn't see that used to be a burning stump that burned down into the ground and you couldn't see it from the thickness of the ash. And I've had one. And you're hiking along, inspecting the fire line, and you step into a pit of hot ash. So yes, if you're skydiving in, you definitely don't want to land on that. So,
but okay, that's just interesting in itself, though, because what's a situation that you would say, okay, well, we're gonna have to airdrop these guys into an area. Like, when would you do that?
Yeah, remote reconnaissance. So the advantage of hot shots, we hiked everywhere. So type 1 crew is a smoke jumper or a hot shot, right? So if they have the time to let hot shots get in, we'll hike in there, right? Now, if it's smoke jumpers, let's say you're in the middle of Wyoming and they need somebody to get out there ASAP because they saw a smoke pop up from a fire outpost miles into the wilderness. That's the advantage of smoke jumpers, because it would take us maybe a day to hike in there. So if I could drop a couple guys in, right, get them to hike in, inspect the area, assess the potential of fire, which most likely it was a dry lightning strike, as it's called. Then they assess the situation, and then they check in with incident command, and they say, hey, okay, do we want to let it burn? Are we going to manage this? Are we going to monitor it? Or is it too high of a fire risk for maximum spread and could turn uncontrollable, right? This is all stuff happening above our heads. This is all the stuff that, you hop on the radio, you report the stuff. So that's the advantage of smoke jumpers. They can fly overhead, skydive in, get on top of something fast. And if they can get around it or at least assess it fast enough, then they report into incident command, and then they make determinations from there. So I had somebody, it was a great movie that came out, and I got to shout out this crew because I knew them before they died. They turned it into a movie. It was called Only the Brave was the movie. And it was about the story of the Granite Mountain Hot Shots. The entire crew was burned over in 2013 outside the Yarnell Hill fire outside of Prescott, Arizona, their home city. Being an Arizona crew, I knew most of them before they passed. I served on some fires alongside those guys in 10 and 11, and it wasn't 100% of the same crew, but I knew some names. So it's not like we were best friends, but you know each other. So that movie was created about them. So in that movie, they referred to hotshots as the Green Berets or the Navy SEALs. You know, we culturally, that wasn't a thing. My training, my leadership, they were very adamant, very old school. They said, listen, you're not here to be the hero. You're not here to sing the praise. You're here, literally, quote unquote, all I want to see from you is asses and elbows, because you're bent over, you know, digging, literally hand digging a fire break for miles, for days on end. You know, chainsaws go in first, digging crew goes in behind. You're like a 20-man or woman, a freight train of productivity, basically. So that's what a hotshot crew does.
Okay, so let's start there, because now here's the real thing. As we're watching all this stuff going on in Los Angeles, there's plenty of conversation about origins and mismanagement and environmental. Yeah, there's so much there. But let's say, before we get into this specific situation, let's talk about your job, because this is just a way of the world, a way of nature, where, like you said, a lightning strike or something and dry brush, and it's just how the earth rejuvenates itself. But
fire's natural. If
fire is natural, but if you're living next to it, it's also deadly. So when you talk about fire breaks there, can you give us a little bit about the worst situations you've been in, the most dangerous calls you've been on? And then I want to start getting into how you would explain for the audience and I how wildland firefighting works versus urban and suburban. Obviously the setting is different there, but you were just talking about digging fire breaks and everything that people should know. What's going on in Los Angeles that we're not seeing right now?
LA.
Yeah.
California in general. I'll bite my tongue on a few things for a second. That is one of the most mismanaged states. And again, I'm not a career guy, so I'm sure I'll get some hate on that, but that state's a hot freaking mess. Always has been. So I'll go back to your original questions. So wildland firefighting, whether you're a hotshot, whether you're a smoke jumper, or quote unquote a type 2 level crew, you know, the next step down below type 1, your air attack, flying it in, your hell attack, taking helicopters, whatever. Basic training is you surround the fire. So when you see these news reports saying 0% contained, 15% contained, 15% containment, that is referring to the perimeter. You know, they got to anchor in on wherever they're going to decide to tie in on the fire line, and then they have to determine what is the safest way to get around the fire, literally. And true containment, when I served, was there's a line, literally dug either with bulldozers or by hand, depending on the terrain, completely around that fire. And it is being hiked and inspected. And there's terms called cold trailing. Once the fire has calmed down, you cold trail the perimeter, all these things that I learned years ago. So when you see containment, that is not referring to how many water loads you've seen dropped on the news out of an airplane or a helicopter, or, oh my God, I saw some kind of hilarious post the other day. This woman, no joke, asked why they were dyeing the water red instead of just leaving it natural.
Oh,
dropping it on a fire.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Like, you ever hear of Google? Like it's called fire retardant, and it's a special formulation of fire suppression materials. That's why it's red. It is a chemical concoction, and that's what they're dropping on the fire, not water.
I know. It's incredible. I mean, hey, listen, that as a kid, I always was like, wow, why is it red? But the last thing I would have thought was that there was some kind of an aesthetic treatment to before it was deployed.
Well, dude, if you could paint that line from the air,
I know.
mean, then you could see it from the satellites, right?
Like glows in the dark. Yes.
I mean, now, granted, I did fight a fire in 2011. You could see from the satellites because it was 1 million acres. So that's not an exaggeration. It was a 1 million acre burn stretching from Arizona through New Mexico. But that was It was wind driven, which obviously California knows very, very well. That's what we're seeing here with Palisades and the Eaton fire and everything else. California is famous for their Santa Ana winds. I learned all about that in the academy. I learned all about that when I served in Region 3, because as a hotshot crew, you're shipped all over the West. So the first couple of months of your season, yeah, you're based in your home terrain, right? Region 3, right? Arizona and New Mexico is our primary response region. Once the other region starts, quote, spinning up, right, coming into their fire season starts, like some areas of the country would start, like we started back then, April. And now that they're Mesa instead of Pleasant Valley, Arizona, I think they might start earlier or later. I can't remember. I was just there last year, 2024, for the 50th reunion. That's how long my crew has been around, 50 years. And so it just depends on where you're at in the country, what time you start, what time you end. A lot of people don't realize that 80% of the hotshot crew or wildland firefighting crew aren't even full-time federal employees. You don't have benefits. You're a hired seasonal monkey. I have no problem saying those words because people need to hear the truth. There is no pension. There is no benefits. There is no proper income.
And yet you're being called into some of the most dangerous conditions that can be generated. Go to that for a little bit. What is the worst, the most dangerous call you've been on? I'd love to hear about this.
They're all different, right? I mean, there was times during my rookie year in 2010, it was boring, right? You're like, the sad part is, I know this sounds bad, but in order for us to make money to survive the rest of the year as a human being, you look forward to fire, because once a fire occurs and they order up a hotshot crew to be shipped in and assigned to the fire. Once you're assigned to the fire, and the more dangerous, the better. This is how messed up it is. Then sweet, we need to get a full 14-day roll. So that's the policy, is you can only serve 14 live fire assignment days before you get days off. So our goal, our hope is less travel. Is like, okay, great, you're going to ship me to Oregon, cool, or Northern California, cool. Hopefully I hit all 14 live fire days and I get to come home and have a couple days off. But let's say you're going from a tiny fire that was only 5 days. Then they might leave you pre-positioned there for a couple days in case a new start pops off. Then they move you to another fire or to a different state until you hit that 14-day. So sometimes you're traveling for a month or two. It all depends on the intensity of the season. I've been on fires where, okay, we had that thing mopped up in a day or two. I've been on fires where it was the full 14 days. I was on a fire, I remember, for a week, and then we think everything's good, and then all of a sudden, the relative humidity drops out, a wind event moves in, lightning hit on the opposite side of the canyon. All of a sudden, one fire front decides to be drawn, because fire gets drawn to fire. So a fire front gets tied into another fire front, and you get what's called a blow up. You don't want blow ups. Blow ups are bad. And next thing you know, you got a wall of fire. Oh my God, I can't remember the name of the fire right now. I have photos. The fire was taller than the treetops. So from ground to overhead, when you have fire reach a canopy, you get the hell out of there, because you ain't stopping that. Once it hits the treetops, it's jumping from canopy to canopy to canopy. It's over your head. You get out of there. That's a no-no. And I remember we were positioned down the road. We knew where they were trying to tie a fire line into an existing fire line, and they were using the road as a break. Roads are great for natural fire breaks. You know, your goal is to have a break, right? So
yeah,
if you don't have to build it, a road's great. So usually we'll prep a road. So we were there just doing a road prep, a couple miles down, cutting maybe on average, let's say 50 feet into the wooded tree line. And you're not taking all the trees down. You're cleaning up all those, like out there, ponderosa pine is a very popular species, very resilient in fire, by the way. Quick, fun science note. They release their seeds with fire. So the species literally is designed by Mother Nature to require fire to repopulate its forest. So the pine cones drop, but they don't release their seeds without fire. Mm-hmm. So fire is natural. Okay.
And that carbon, it's the carbon, also the carbon from the fire too. That's what I learned when I was up in Maine.
Natural fertilizer, nitrogen, all that. So, but anyway, we'll prep 50 feet in, remove any kind of we call them ladder fuels, like the little tiny like dead limbs that might be. We'll basically, as high as we can reach with our chainsaws, we're just, zipping up and down the tree trunks and doing that 50 feet in for miles to remove anything called ladder fuel, so it helps prevent fire from climbing into the treetops, because you want fire to move through, not get stuck. That's the dangerous stuff, kind of what's going on in LA. Hey, if you have too much fuel around, you're going to increase fire intensity. This isn't rocket science. You want a fire to get bigger on your patio in your fire pit. Throw more wood on it. The more fuel, the more intensity. Am I giving anything crazy here?
No. But let me ask you this about the intensity. Before you got on, I found a little bit of information on a nagging question I had about the Santa Ana winds and how intense
they're
things.
Aggressive.
Yeah, and that's what all my friends in California have said. Oh, Frank, this is something that we just live with. It's something that you know about and whatever. But when you start talking about 90 to 100 mile an hour sustained winds, I started wondering what the actual conditions on the ground contribute to the local weather. And I found something here that said that heat from large wildfires can create its own weather system, essentially,
yes,
including strong, erratic winds. So how much would you say miles per hour can your average wildfire add to this blowtorch-like spread?
It's going to be different every time.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a scientist, right? All I could speak of is experience. That fire front that I was referring to, right? So they call us up. They're like, hey guys, it's getting a little intense. We need to get you up here. Our crew carriers come flying up the road. They load us up. They don't even have us store our gear. Like, throw your gear in the back. Just get in. We got to get up and try and hold the line. We drive up. As soon as we all get out, shoulder our saws, packs are on. We turn. And it sounds like a freight train coming at us. And I just watched this wall of fire up to the treetops, and it's still probably a football field away. And we've got engines positioned there. We've got like portable, looks like giant kiddie pools for holding water, and they have portable pumps, and they're hosing the side of the road down to wet it to kind of slow it. Now all of a sudden they want us to grab our fire torches and set fire on the ground, because if you can burn off the fuel between the road and the fire front before the front gets there, it can dissipate it a little bit, right? So again, about fire is attracted to fire. So we start laying fire on the ground, hoping that the fire front pulls our added fire towards it, so it helps burn that grasses and stuff up away from the road toward the main front. It didn't care at that point. It started sucking fresh air in from behind it, and then leaped 50 yards right at us. Like all of a sudden you could feel your face. So you're getting sunburn basically, but it's the radiant heat and the convective heat coming off of the front. And we get the command to get the hell out of there. The trucks are already gone. Like, we can't get in our crew carriers. So we about face, line out, because we're very militarized. And we hike out in a perfect straight line back down the road that we came from. Speed hiking, you don't run. There's never a run. It's against training. You never ran. But we basically speed hiked our butts out of there with, a 30-pound chainsaw on your shoulder and, 40, 50 pounds of gear on your back and big logger fire boots. And no joke, as soon as we get a few hundred yards down the road, you can hear it. It's just it sounds like a train crashing in, and then basically it jumps the road, catches the other forest on fire on the other side of the road, because there's no stopping it. It just ate up everything in its path, jumped the road. And we got the command to say, listen, you're not going back in until nighttime, until the sun goes down, because sun adds to intensity. Mm-hmm. And at night, without the sun, hopefully we get a little bit cooler temperatures. The intensity of the heat can drop a little bit, and it might be more manageable to get around it. Try and get, we call it going direct, meaning instead of doing a remote perimeter and then letting fire just eat everything up in the path, if it's already exceeded what we wanted it to go, they'll have us go direct. That means you're right up on the fire edge, cutting the fire break real time with it. And you're not doing that in LA right now. So some spots they are. I've been watching the news. So it depends on where it's at, what the terrain is. Is it safe? Is it fast to get people in and out of there? All these variables are constantly changing. So again, like, you could be in what's called a chute or a draw, depending on the terrain. California's got very mountainous terrain. You don't want to be in there, because you can create like a blowtorch effect. You get the winds change and you have fire next thing you know, you're funneling it. It's like squeezing a garden hose with water, but you're doing it with fire, wind, and the natural terrain.
Oh,
and it becomes a blowtorch.
You know what?
So,
I've never done anything like you have, but anybody who has built a decent fire in their backyard, in a fire pit or in a fireplace, will know that the positioning of the wood and the repositioning of the wood really does create those. I mean, you can see the airflow. The airflow just really just ramp up, and it starts creating really intense flame. And I can imagine that on a larger scale, using some sort of a valley or a gorge or something like that, it would become pretty intense.
Yeah, well, part of California's history, and again, if you want to go political on it, whatever, you take my feedback as you see fit, because I dealt with it years ago, and it doesn't surprise me. There's citizens who complain to the local Congress people that they don't like fire. And it's like, well, if you don't deal with it in a managed way, eventually you're going to have to deal with it in an unmanaged way.
And the managed way, when you talk about proper prevention, if that's even a thing, or mitigation,
it's fuel mitigation.
Fuel mitigation. Okay, like that's if people say, well, clearing brush, you got to clear brush. How easy is that, and what is the clearing process like, especially when you're talking about millions of acres that have to be done? I'd have to imagine every year.
The regions that are nuking off right now, I'm just blanket. It's not man's. There's an annoying species in the Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico, probably in California too, called manzanita. There's another species. I'm just blanking on it right, but I know it's in those canyons that's been nuking off. It burns very hot. The sap is like jet fuel. So it's like a giant weed. So, for example, when the Granite Mountain hotshots were killed, when they got burned over on the Yarnell Hill fire, they tried escaping out through a canyon that had not been burned in probably, I forget what the number was, 30 years. Like, they just let it go. The material was over their heads, and they're trying to bushwhack their way through it to get to an established safety zone, which was a ranch which had concrete slabs like all around the buildings. It was a great safety zone. Well, they had to cut their way there. Like, we still don't know why they escaped that way. They went down the canyon into this like C-shaped bowl that has 30 years of growth. Well, then the wind shifted, cut their exit off, and it's either you turn around and go back up the canyon wall that you hike down, or they were forced to deploy their fire shelters. And fire shelters, whatever. There was like a movie, they called it Shake and Bake, whatever. The old popcorn popper things. They're not designed to live in. They're designed for fire to move over you, right? It's like you train to get how to get into that shelter as fast as possible, unload your gear, throw anything explosive or flammable away from you, right? Climb into that cocoon, get it as tight to the earth as you can. You don't have any burnable material under you. You're scraping the ground, clearing it. This is that worst case scenario. You do not want to deploy a shelter. And then you want to hopefully get burned over, not burned on top of. The problem with that canyon was it was a vortex. I mean, the whole thing, the fire came into that canyon and just sat on top of them and just nuked off all that material because they had a canyon wall all around them. And I flew out a few months after they were found, and it looked like a burnt moonscape. And I've seen stuff like that in California all the time because it just nukes off. But if you don't manage that, and fire ever gets in there, you're going to get what's called a blow up. You have so much fuel, it's a powder keg waiting to happen. So the long-term issue of Cali is something I learned in 2009 at that New York Academy. They had, I think it was that year actually, they had rolled out a new class called WUI, W-U-I, and it stands for Wildland Urban Interface. And I'm sure they got to be still training that to this day because people like to live in the wild. They want to be in the country. They especially California, they're trying to move out of the cities. They're building on those mountainsides, everything else. So you are accepting an inherent percentage of risk if you're choosing to build or buy deeper and deeper into the wild. California has a large population.
Yeah.
So if you have no more room in the city, or you want your kids to grow up in the country, they keep digging and building deeper and deeper into the wild. Well, understand what you're doing. You're putting yourself into the wild. So let alone wildlife, the wild terrain, the wild species of grasses, the higher risks of wildfire, all these other variables come into play. I don't know if the realtors are just not explaining this to people, or people who choose, because California is a beautiful state. If you're an outdoorsy person, it's gorgeous. Now, the government's a hot mess and the politicians are a hot mess. I mean, they basically are destroying that state. So again, when you have congressmen listening to citizens saying, I'm afraid of fire, I don't want to see fire, that's my personal position. You can like it or not. I'm like, dude, if you don't deal with it today and you allow prescribed burning to manage this material, it will overgrow. And then if you're also one of these morons who wants pretty landscaping and you don't listen to, I thought it was a law. I'm not a lawyer and I don't follow all their policies out there. But when I fought fire, if a fire was bad enough, we don't do structure protection. We were wildland firefighters. But if we were trying to protect a region and they needed us to go direct, and there was a fire, I remember in 2011, they had us going from home to home. The engine crews are going down back and forth, right? Might have been in California. I can't remember. A long time ago. And they literally wanted us to flag the mailboxes. Like, we had time to do this. They said, hey, each property you get to, if you could do a little bit of perimeter protection in conjunction with the engine crews, awesome. If it's so overgrown that it's going to take too long to try and find a way to get it buffered, flag it as you're not getting saved. Like, literally, that was a command. Like, we flagged mailbox yes, mailbox no, and we were basically deciding what one could we potentially dissipate, and give it a chance. And this is back then, by the way. There's cocky people with money that would say, I have insurance, or it's my second home or my third home, it's fine. Well, fast forward that to today, and what are we seeing in the news? 3 months ago, insurance companies pulling out of California, Florida, other states. I'm not blaming the insurance companies. I think they know the numbers. They know the risks. This is what they do. Didn't you see some writing on the wall here?
Not only that, but even when you consider a person making a decision like that as a neighbor and a member of the community, you're essentially saying that I am fine with my, you would think that a responsible person who keeps all this in mind and actually wants to be a good neighbor would want to be the place where the chain breaks. Instead,
well, quote, I think you should quote that good neighbor. I mean, are you?
I know. Well, obviously not. If you say, to hell with it, I have insurance and let the brush. It's not even about you and what you're willing to lose. Your property butts up against somebody else who might be doing whatever they can to clear their property out, but
there you go, right? You could have somebody who does pay attention, right? Who does keep their fuel loads mitigated, does keep a 20 to 30 foot, perimeter on their fancy landscaping. Like, hey, don't plant things up against the burnable material side of a house. That's pretty well known in the West. Well, I'm not poo-pooing this. There's thousands of people who have lost their homes. So that's very tragic. But why do you have that much landscaping when I look at the before photo and now your home is gone? Now, there are some homes that can survive. You put a metal roof on it. You have, again, I'm not an architect, right? But okay, well, if you have a stone stucco exterior with a metal roof, I think you got a chance of lasting a little bit longer than somebody else's home and how it's built, especially if they have landscaping up against it. So let's say you're the good neighbor, right? I can afford to do cool, like, I don't know if it's green construction, whatever, recycled metal roof and stucco stone exterior, and then I'm not going to plant any fancy landscaping, shrubs, trees, or anything within 50 feet of the edge of the house, right? I got a big buffer zone. Good job, right? And then instead of grasses and shrubberies, maybe I'll do stone landscaping, because that's popular in Arizona. A lot of people, you can't even get grass to grow. Which, again, let's not get going on the water issue in California. But yeah, instead of having bright green grass with expensive sprinkler systems with your constant drought issues, maybe just give up on the grass, dude. Because when the grass gets dried out, that's now a burnable material. Maybe embrace some stone. I mean, just throwing it out there. You are in the Southwest.
That's one thing that people don't really get, especially if you're not from California, or it seems the people who are from California as well too. I mean, because of what we have been able to do in more sane times with irrigation and better farming practices, we've been able to take arid, geography and turn it into very lush, irrigated places. But now, of course, like you said before, through what seems to be decades of slowly, building layers of incompetence and also bureaucratic, straitjacket, they're like it's becoming drier and drier and more volatile. And, here's one last thing I want to ask you before we talk about your charity work. Obviously, we can go on and on and on, and I'd love to have you back. But I wanted to ask you this one last thing before we start wrapping up tonight, and that is what you may ascribe the distance between the blazes, because what are some of the more common reasons that fires could start essentially at the same time, but be separated by sometimes tens of miles or sometimes more? I mean, I asked this because in the last couple of years, whether it be Lahaina or spots in Canada or California, we get these time-lapse satellite videos of the blazes beginning at the same time in various locations that one would have to assume would be way too far for an ember to travel. And I just wonder what you ascribe that to.
Ember wash can travel.
How far, though? Because
Again, it depends on the situation, right? That's the craziest. You got to have the right winds, the right weather. I've been on fires where because here's the thing, over decades. I mean, again, we're going back. What's the one book in my library here? The Great Fires of 1910. Actually, I have a sticker on one of my Yeti mugs. Anyway, that's when wildland firefighting kind of was created and invented. Back then, wildfires, it was half the country was on fire in 1910. A lot of people don't know that. It's a great book. And they go over how back then we were big on railroads. So the forests were so dry, you're taking a freight train, bringing timber out of the mountains to build homes and stuff like that. Well, next thing you know, the metal wheels are hitting the metal rail and it's dry enough, you throw a spark off and next thing you get the forest on fire. So wildfires have been around for a long time. I mean, do the math, that's well over 100 years. And that's just what it's documenting it. Native Americans have used it to clear land and manage their agricultural practices before our modern agriculture. And they figured out a way to do it. So granted, they didn't have the level of WUI that we have today, the wildland urban interface. So, but yes, there's fires that we've studied when crews were killed years ago, where you have a massive, it looks like a nuclear bomb going off. I mean, no joke. You could see a plume, and they've measured it. It can go into different tiers of our atmosphere that high. Well, when you get that high up, one of the worst case scenarios we would see is it would develop an ice cap. Again, you said it earlier, right? Wildfire can create its own weather pattern, right? So when you start seeing this nuclear bomb style plume building up, and I haven't studied this in years, so I'm going off of classes from a long time ago, but it's sucking fresh air in from the outside, pulling it into the center and going up.
Is that why we get those
upflow.
Is that why we get those fire tornadoes?
Well, that's a whole different thing, but that's another example of unstable atmospheric conditions, actually. Yeah. So anyway, it's just sucking in the air and building and building and building. So nothing's alive, by the way, in the middle of that thing, but it's just going up. And once it keeps going, if it keeps building, it will eventually reach a fail point, and you have ember wash that's being sent for miles. You'll smell, like here in the Northeast. Remember last year with the Alberta fires, the smoke?
Yep.
That's normal. Like I was out mountain biking. People were like, "You're outside exercising," and I was like, "All right, I gotta
say, Scott, you say that's normal. The last 2 years we had that week each. The last 2 years consecutively, where we had that couple of days where the sky goes pink, and I remember 2023. We actually
it's normal for me. It doesn't freak me out.
I've been in New York my whole life. I've never seen that, and especially for that to be coming from hundreds of miles away.
You know why it came so far? Because the fires were so big, and because they hadn't had fire in those wildlands in a long time. So it was a powder keg up there waiting to happen. Canada is a massive country, they can also have mismanagement issues or choices to ignore their wildlands, and eventually something's going to blow up, right? It just happened to be north of us.
See, this is why I was saying before, most people, especially if we're not in the business that you're in and have that kind of that experience, when we see these time-lapse videos from a satellite image that it's put together, and we see a fire here, it looks like a triangle, 25 miles between each point. Most people just say this got to be coordinated arson.
I would agree with that, actually. If I was going to jump in at that point anyway, I was like, again,
you can go there.
Call it a foil hat or whatever.
No,
I'm just like,
Scott, you can go there with me. You can go there with me.
Because also those citizens already tackled that one. Oh no, the immigration thing is a terrible thing to talk about. It is what it is. The guy had no U.S. citizen ID. He's walking around with a blowtorch, setting shit on fire. Pardon my French. But like, bro, what else is that? That's arson. Just saying. So I'm glad the citizens tackled that guy, and I guess he got arrested, but we'll probably let him go because it's California.
They did. I believe they did. There wasn't.
And it was like, okay, well, you got one dude doing that. And then my boy Jeremy, what he come across? Like an electrical box, somebody stuffed some material in and set that thing on fire, and he happened to be driving by and happened to pull over and take his kid's water bottle and pour it out. Like, that's arson. So
yeah, exactly.
What's going on?
So so that's why I understand what they're up against over there. You're up against administrative incompetence that's been layered for years. Also, there's no doubt a big subplot that's foreign and domestic terrorism by either like domestic homeless and also foreign nationals, that, as you said. But, so even if fire departments in California were totally free from any crippling forms of diversity madness or all that stuff, this is still a lot for those firehouses and these crews to be up against.
And this is not even peak wildland fire season.
When does that happen? It's not
summer yet.
Okay.
Summer is the peak wildland firefighting season. We used to call it Dirty August, to give you an example, because I'd already been fighting fires since April. And come August, our crew would time out at the end of September because you're only allowed to work until your hours were up. And then they had to make sure they laid you off, because that way if you kept working, then you would qualify for actual full-time federal income as a full-time federal employee. It's such a broken, corrupt system. So why do you think I don't do that anymore? But yeah, peak wildland fire when I served was really July through September for the Southwest. I was on fires in September, August in Colorado, Montana, Arizona, New Mexico really started kicking off June, July. Again, all these months, what am I referring to? Summer. Well, California's right next door. So why is that any different? Why are we having massive fires, quote unquote droughts, in the middle of winter? This is California's winter too. They have ski season in their mountains. I mean, I'm not denying that it's dry, but maybe if you didn't blow up your dams and empty your reservoirs for, what was the one case? He was saving a smelt. Good job, buddy.
I know.
That governor's a moron.
I know.
No one gives a crap about your smelt. But hey, listen, I love nature. I'm an outdoorsman. Okay. You have to find balance. Society's not going to slow down. Technology's not going to slow down. So I get it. You're trying to find the sweet spot. The problem with California is they just crap on everything and make it worse. And they're like, oh, I got to save the trout or the smelt or whatever. I'm like, okay, but you're not going to stop human growth. The amount of WUI that has happened since I served in California alone, like, they're why we created WUI as a class back then. Like, you are the classic example of building deeper and deeper into the wildlands. But now you have a water shortage issue. LA, how's the water come in? A concrete aqueduct that you built. That is not a Mother Nature made river. That's a man-made river. Anybody's ever been to LA and seen it? How does Phoenix and Scottsdale get their water? Concrete aqueduct, a man-made river. Why? Because you're a desert valley floor. Phoenix is called, quote, the valley. When I had my days off, I would go to the valley. The water has to come from the mountains. You have to get it there. It was a desert, still is a desert. So it's like, okay, well, clearly, where's the water coming from? the winter melts. So if you dam the rivers or waterways, you can harvest and store water. I'm not an engineer. I did study it for a little while when I was younger, but it's like, okay, this isn't rocket science.
Yeah.
I get it. You're interrupting wildlife, but what do you want? Do you want happy, healthy wildlife, or do you want higher risks of human beings losing everything? And like,
and you know what?
Everything.
Wildlife adapts when you're talking about you can't upset. I was even watching this. I don't know if you ever watched any of that series Clarkson's Farm. You ever watch Clarkson's Farm with Jeremy Clarkson? Yeah, he's a British television show host. He's a funny guy, but he goes into the farm. He buys farmland, and a lot of what the show is him contending with the British government in land management and all that stuff, and how impossible it is to move out a certain type of badger or anything else like that.
It's an ecosystem for a reason.
Understood.
Yeah.
I have friends who have farms up in upstate New York who have literally hundreds of chickens killed every year by bald eagles that they can't get rid of because they're federally protected. So, you start wondering, what is more valuable? You're not, are you really going to make sure that, are you going to create conditions where an entire community can burn down to the ground because you don't want to displace a field mouse 50 miles away? It really is crazy.
That's California's conundrum.
Exactly.
They think they're saving one leg and they're cutting off three more to do that. Like I don't know. It's like a self-replicating octopus or something. I don't know what they're doing. It's like, I got to save this one leg. It's going to get cut off. I got to save the smelt.
Yeah.
But I'm going to cut off the 3 human legs over here. Like, I can't.
I
don't
know.
get them. When I was out there, I was like, there's no way I'm moving here. I was fine visiting it back then. I loved mountain biking there, skydiving there, hiking there. Beautiful. I didn't have to deal with it as a citizen. And now all these years later, I'm like, what are you doing? I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And then they wonder why insurance companies pulled out. Like I didn't even know this until this last week. I've been so busy. I can't follow everything. You probably know about it. I didn't know that California had a law capping the insurance. So if I have a $1.5 million home and you have a $500,000 home, like the insurance companies are capped by the state. Oh, they're protecting the citizens. I'm like, yeah, but then how do you expect the insurance company to pay for all those homes if you can't let them charge more for the more expensive home?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't make any sense.
No, see, Scott, when that news broke about what was going on months prior to these fires popping off, about people losing insurance and certain companies pulling out and all that stuff, some people cried conspiracy. And whereas there's plenty of room to say, oh, there's a lot of, I believe, intentional goings on over here in places like California, and we'll see who gets the rights to rebuild and redevelop the land, what goes in there. There's plenty more to see of what's really going on here.
Oh yeah, just like we saw in Lahaina last year. That's
exactly
some sketchy stuff.
But I've
already seen an article, LA #2 or whatever, and I'm like, okay, if you want to throw a foil hat on, I don't know, man. That looks like some sketchy stuff.
Oh, it does. But from a business standpoint, if you are an insurance carrier, you need to know your marketplace better than anybody, because so you can assess, risk good. And if
let's think about this. What is around LA? Mountains. What do they do? What the citizens did? They built their homes deeper. We've already gone over this, right? We built deeper into the mountains, but then we don't want fire managed to mitigate the fuels in a safer way. So we wait until a blow up happens and just nukes off everything. Which we've seen over the past couple of years. Every year there's fire out there. California knows fire. So I don't know why their heads are so far up their butts. But anyway, you nuke off a mountainside. Now there's nothing left alive. It might take a year or two to truly bring all the species back to life. And here's where I'm going with this. Hold the dirt in place. So now what's the next natural phenomenon side effect? If and when you do get rains, which, by the way, Arizona gets what California gets, called monsoonal season. Monsoonal season is like a torrential downpour. Guarantee we were not going on any fires when that would hit in during our fire season, but I forget it was El Nino or La Nina, whatever year had a higher level of that. Well, you're talking like just dumping tons of rain off the Pacific. Okay, well, if there's no plant life to hold the dirt in place, what happens with too much water going down over the dirt?
Landslides.
Mudslides, landslides, right? What do these people do in the mountains outside of LA? They build their homes on the side of mountains and cliffs. What do we see on news and videos going viral? Homes sliding off the side of a mountain. Ergo, insurance companies saying, okay, now we already knew about the earthquakes. Now you're allowing wildfires to get crazy. And then we still got to deal with natural flooding, potential hurricanes, and now mudslides ripping homes off the house. And you're not letting us increase the cost of insurance to cover these things. So as a businessman myself, I'm like, I get it. Like, yo, I'm not going to insure you anymore. The state is handcuffing me. I can't afford to insure homes here. What are you doing? I'm out.
No, I'm telling you, out of all the things that really stink to high heaven, the business aspect of this is really something where it's just like, well, what do you expect them to do? I mean, really? I mean, and you get it from all ends. Like you said, there's the chronic mismanagement, and there's the capping of coverage. It is, from a state, you're pretty much telling everybody we are in an absolute toxic decline. Don't invest in us because we're just going to kill you off. So
well, it's basic economics.
Yeah,
like, you don't even. This isn't even like I paid my way through school, and I'll tell everybody today, you don't need to go to college to run a business. That's all BS. So there's a lot of very expensive degrees that you don't need to pay for. You want to be a doctor, you want to be a scientist. I get that. Engineer, sure. I don't regret it per se, but I didn't need to do it. What I do today and the money I make today, it's sweat equity and everything else. So this isn't rocket science. You don't need advanced accounting to understand, like, okay, the expenses are higher than the income coming in. This is the problem.
Yeah.
If you can't find a way to balance the sheet, you got to kill the business, or in this case, get the hell out of there. So.
Well, there's so much more we can talk about here, Scott, and I'd love to have you back, like I said. But in the meantime, as I have to wrap this episode up, please let everybody know about the charity work that you do at livethefuel.com and how they can follow your work, because I know that you're a podcast host, and of course, like we said, I just saw we got a text message from Jeremy Ryan Slate. He watched the whole thing. He loved the conversation tonight. I'm really happy we got linked up together. Let everybody know about what you're doing.
Jeremy's my boy because he sends me great guest co-hosts with his company from my Live the Fuel podcast audience. So yeah, everything started with Live the Fuel. Then my wife got tired of hearing the fire stories, so then I wrote my book, So You Want to Be a Hotshot. But then while writing the book, I realized I don't want to make money off of it. I wanted to do something good with it one day. So I had created, that's why it's on the back, so there's no lie. That's the logo for my charity, Fuel Foundations. So Fuel Foundations is a legitimate 501c3 that I created. All the proceeds from this, hotshotbook.com helps people find it on Amazon. It goes right to the listing. But all the books go into my charity. And then I call a for-purpose business for what I do, all the consulting I do, everything I do. So 5% of my income also goes into the charity. So Fuel Foundations, as of late last year, I created a whole new boots refuel fund program, because you can barely see in the background, but those are my original Wildland firefighting boots on that bourbon keg behind me. And back when I served, they were like $450. These are top of the line boots. Well, nowadays, thanks to inflationary costs, a proper rebuildable Wildland firefighting boot could be anywhere from $600 to $800.
Jeez.
And the one company I partnered with a few months ago is called JK Boots. I got to give them a shout out because they set up me an account for my charity. I'm getting them at wholesale cost, so it is a little bit of a discount. But my charity's paying for these, so I awarded these are all hot shots that got boots last year at the end of their fire season that I paid for. And then JK Boots actually shared my post last weekend, and CAL FIRE found out about it. And I've got people blowing me up over Instagram and everything else asking for boots. And I'm like, guys, I don't have the boots. JK makes them. I'm trying to pay for them. But I've already received, just in the past 72 hours, too many requests.
Are most of them from California?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're actually, every single person who's asked for a pair of boots is serving right now on the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. It's either mothers, sisters, wives, or the firefighters themselves via Instagram, tagging me, commenting to me. Like, I'm up to 25 requests in 72 hours. I'm like, guys, I had to turn it into a lottery program. So no joke. I just posted the videos tonight. I took my helmet and I put all their names in. And to be fair, I'm like, I'm just going to pull a couple names at a time. So like tonight, these guys right here, these two, were added into my order form, sent to JK Boots, and they will be JK Boots will contact these firefighters directly, and then I have a direct bill set up. They pick out their boots, I pay for it, and these guys will have brand new boots.
So Scott, so for people at home, they can go to livethefuel.com if they wanted to buy a book or even just send you, because we have a very generous.
The book is linked there, but to put charity first, Fuel Foundations, plural.org is the organization.
And that's where people can just drop $100 or something like that. Fuel Foundation.
Think about the power of crowdfunding. I've run crowdfunding campaigns for clients. $5, $10, $15, it adds up fast.
Absolutely.
I get it. People have budgets. That's what I'm trying to pull off here. I was like, guys, I'll take $2, $5. I don't care. Donate through the website. It all goes into the account. And then I can start helping people, because as this grows and more people contact me with rebuildable boots like I have, well, JK, it's more affordable. If I just have to pay to resole your boot to give you a better tread, because these guys are hiking the treads off their boots like I used to do. I had my boots rebuilt for only $150. They put new treads on the bottom. But there's guys contact me saying, because they don't have these quality boots, oh, my seams are coming apart. Like the boots are literally falling apart while fighting wildfire. You can't have that.
Yeah.
So that's why I committed the company to my organization to only partner with legit boots like JK Boots companies. Like, they're going to get the top of the line boot that I used to fight fire with. They're just expensive. But then after this season and the next season, okay, I need this new tread put on. You can ship the boot back. They hand rebuild the boot for less money instead of having to buy new boots all the time.
That's great.
But people don't realize we have to buy them. The government doesn't pay for your boots. So I got people now contacting me from academies. I got 2 guys today. I'm like, guys, I got to put you at the back. You're not on a live fire yet. He's like, yeah, but once I finish the academy, I have to have boots and I can't afford them. I'm like, I can't right now. I was like, one of my minimum requirements is you have to have what's called a red card, meaning you have been tested, pack tested. You said ruck on your earlier podcast. I ruck all the time. You have to go through a pack test to be approved for live fire assignments, and then you're being deployed. Those are the people I'm helping right now. I'm helping the men and the women that have red card approval and they're on fire, like not on fire, but on fire assignments and serving. I can't help everybody right now, and it's really driving me nuts. But I'm hoping to build some steam.
Yeah, you're doing more than most in that respect, and it's a really noble cause. And I hope that a lot of people reach out to you and inquire about any of the ways that they can help, whether it's buying a book or just sending a 5-spot or something like that. And I'd love to.
All adds up, man. All adds up.
And you know what? I'm glad that we made friends here, because I'd love to have you back. And I know that this is not the last time we're going to talk about an event like this, and maybe get a little bit of play-by-play commentary on what's going on and what can make things easier and better. But
if you're going to keep digging into this stuff, I have connections and I have data points of actual wildland firefighter substacks that I'm plugged into that I can connect you with and stuff too. I would legit former hotshots and stuff.
I would love to have a small panel with you and a smoke jumper one night. I want to talk to a hotshot, a smoke jumper, and I want to talk about that from the ground up and from the sky down. That would be a really
sick. That'd be sick.
That would be interesting.
I don't have any. I can't think of any smoke jumpers right now that I'm connected with today. But
we got time.
Badass to do a panel. Yeah, we got time. Yeah.
Well, Scott Mulvaney,
this has been great.
It's been great. Livethefuel.com and everything. Ever go there and find everything else you need about him. Thank you for the time, my friend, and we'll talk soon.
You got it.
All right, there you go, everybody. So listen, that is the end of tonight's show. But let me get into everybody's comments just to make sure I didn't miss any. Let's see here. We have a couple on Rumble. Jay Semo says, I logged in late. I'll definitely watch tomorrow. Thank you so much, Jay. And there is one more from Jay. Fascinating second half guess. He's right about Arizona landscaping. No grass and more rocks and stone. There you go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Chai Possum says, really great show, Frank. Thank you. Oki says, same in Oregon. Look into it. He's same in Oregon as what Scott was just describing in California. And NX17 says, thank you for your expertise, Scott. Much respect and blessings to you and all in your field. So I hope that some people reach out to Scott and have a good time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I will talk to you guys tomorrow. It'll be another good one. We have Ilana Freeland on tomorrow. We're going to go deep
into the weeds from coast to coast, from the East Coast with the drones and the fog over to the West Coast with the 100-mile-an-hour winds and the fire, and of course all of the plans for the Olympics and smart cities and smart dust and all that stuff. It's going to be one of those walking on eggshells on YouTube kind of nights that the show will probably be gone shortly after viewing. So I will see you guys tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. And in the meantime, you can go over to quitefrankly.tv. Quitefrankly.tv. Here is what we have going on after hours tonight. It's going to be pretty great. It's a lot of stuff that we had for last night, but we had some internet issues. For the 14th, Suspicious Observers. Got a little bit of Ben Davidson. Jimmy Dore with Colonel Douglas McGregor. Hollywood has ruined the military. Black Pigeon Speaks. Truth Stream Media. What happens when society can't take a joke anymore? What's this? Kirk Packwood. Shane Cashman with Jeremy Ryan Slate. Rome is Burning. And then an Art Bell kicker with R. Scott Limerel. That is the series agenda. Good stuff tonight, everybody. It all starts as soon as this ends on quitefrankly.tv. All the best to you and yours. See you at 7 o'clock tomorrow. Bye-bye.
I'll catch you on the flip side.
Will you shut up?
Meow.